Hello there. Do you ever wake up and get this sudden urge to just make an entire video game inside of Minecraft? Because I do. And for the past little bit, that's exactly what I have been doing. My goal by the end is to have this entire map completely filled out, with all sorts of different terrain and challenges and everything in between that you would expect from a fully fledged game. And so far that you can see that progress is pretty steady. This is going to prove to be the biggest project I've ever taken on in this game. So join me for the first episode of the HOA Devlog. What's that? You wanna know what HOA stands for? I'm not telling you. On the inside of this mountain here is the tutorial level. And this is going to be, well, exactly where players start the map. So like all good tutorials, we need to teach the basics. There are going to be 3 distinct rooms in this level. The puzzle room, the parkour room, and the combat room. All 3 of these are going to be staple mechanics within the entirety of this map. So after picking up a pickaxe and breaking a hole in the wall, let's make the first of the gameplay mechanics for the player. On many games, there is a recurring type of puzzle, and for this map, it's going to use arrows. You see, this takes an input of a number between 1 and 8 depending on the rotation of the arrow in the item frame, and this is pretty much a combination lock. The idea is that the players use the amount of redstone lamps on this wall here to match up with each of these arrows to put in the correct combination. And now to actually code that and make a data pack and all that, so I'll see you in a bit. There we go! Now another fun thing that I added that's actually right here is this. Now you might recognize this if you played Dramal, which you totally should. But in that map, there's something called holotext, which is basically this interface right here. You go up to it, it plays a little chime, and then you get some lore. And I, shamelessly stole the idea. Funnily enough, this next room here is, well, actually completely done already. This is just a parkour course where you need to extend these blocks out. And you achieve that by flicking a lever over here, which then extends this out so you can jump across. Because that lever is literally just one command block, as you can see here, it's just setting these to be redstone blocks to extend these pistons out. I don't actually need any data pack shenanigans for that. The same cannot be said, however, for this next part, because this is the combat room. I have a couple of ideas on what to put in here, so let's get to work. First things first, I want this to fully close behind the player as soon as they step in. And then secondly, I want mobs to spawn at this glass here. There's going to be a few things to each player in here, but the most basic thing of all is just attacking the mob until it dies. Oh boy, have I cooked with this one. So it's a couple hours later, and I have finished the combat tutorial. As you step in, you're going to get some messages in the chat saying that they're initiating a combat test. The first dummy is pretty easy, you kind of just whack him with your sword until he goes down. But the second combat test is where things get a lot more interesting, because I decided to add the single most amazing game mechanic ever conceptualized. Parrying. Luckily, however, I actually already have a parry system coded in Minecraft, so I could just copy it over from my previous map, The Imperishable Void, which you should totally play, by the way. There we go, there's a parry. There's another one. There we go. And then this door in the back opens up, and you can exit the tutorial. There's a couple more of these text boxes on your way out if you care to read up on the lore, but ascending this staircase here, and exiting the cave, you're welcomed to the world of Amadias. That's cool and all, but there's still a lot more to do in this one area. Most notably, right over there in this vast open space is where I'm going to put the game's first town. But I'll talk more about that when I get around to actually making it. It is now the next day. Or maybe it's 2 days later, I actually don't remember. I guess time flies when you're having fun, right? Except I am suffering. You see this area here? This is where a town is going. The towns on this map are not like generic Minecraft villages, no. This is not your grandma's Minecraft map. Because here at HOA, we have convenience stores. Okay, I do jest, but a large part about this map and how it's going to be made is using structure blocks. Modularization, that's a hard modularization. What? I didn't realize how hard that word was to pronounce. I'm just gonna show an example of what I mean. Boom! We have a house. Now all that's left is to do that, a lot more. Alright, time for me to voice over these flashback shots of me placing in all the buildings of the town. There's about 4 or 5 variants of the houses here. There's a regular one with a garage, one that's an L shape, one that's a lot smaller, and then there's these row houses. I actually needed to build the sides of the row house myself because there wasn't a structure for that already. Otherwise, it would just be a completely flat wall and it would look silly, so that's why I did that. But as you can see, these houses were pretty much placed in these lines, and that's because I'm planning on putting a bunch of roads in. I also needed to build this silo structure. Pretty simple, it's basically just a stone cylinder. For the roof, I used diorites, and I spent a little bit of time trying to get the shape right. On the inside, there's just some hay bales, and afterwards, I decided, you know what, this will look better if it was bricks instead of andesite. And then I just put that in a structure block and pasted it around. Obviously, this town is going to be a farming village, so it makes sense to have these silos here, and later I'm going to be putting in farms. For now, it was time to actually place in the roads, which again, I just had structures for already. The T-junctions gave me a little bit of trouble trying to figure out how to place them in, but eventually I got it. I was just making sure that there was always at least one road for each of the houses. There isn't really any way to drive on these roads yet, because, well, there are no cars in the map. Hint hint. Yet. But that's a story for, you know, next devlog. For now, I'm just placing everything in. I had some dirt roads leading from the doors to the road, which were later replaced with cobblestone, because the dirt just didn't look as good. And then it came time to put in the convenience store, the CC stop. The structure that I had for it was a bit too big for this town here, so I shrunk it down by compressing the sides, compressing the parking lot. It took a little bit of time to make sure it looked the way I wanted it to, and then once that was done, I just pasted it into where I wanted it in the town. Hey, did you enjoy that time-lapse? Yeah, well, me too. Anyways, here's Oncon. This looks, pretty good of shaders, I'm not gonna lie. Including the convenience store. I like how the roads turned out, and I was definitely smart to place the houses in such a way that the roads could work with it. There are some parts where the entrances to the houses are not facing the road, but that's because I'm planning on adding farmland here. There's still a lot of work to do, but I've been going at it for over 2 hours now, so I'm going to give myself a bit of a break and then come back to it later. And it's now the next day. Alright, and now it's time to place in all these farms and these gardens. There are pretty much 3 main ideas for to put here, either crops, which could be wheat or beetroot or carrots or potatoes, or sweet berries, or just leaves, basically just a hedge. Either way, they look nice either as farmland or a garden, and sometimes I did actually mix it up. There's also some potted flowers that I added in, and scarecrows around the fences. And a couple of the farms I put in a bench or a tree just to spruce it up a little, you know, add some life to the town. Other than that, there's not much to say. I pretty much just had one solid idea, and then copy and pasted that idea to the other buildings. It surprisingly took way longer than the roads and the buildings, actually. That took about 2 hours, the farms took, like, a lot more, almost 5. I guess just because it's more handcrafted instead of, you know, just copy and paste, copy and paste. I did change it up for a couple of the buildings. For this one, there's a little pond with a bridge going across 2 different gardens. I really like how this one turned out. I actually took a screenshot of this because it was so nice. I realized, you know, part of farming is raising livestock, and so this is a pen of pigs, with some podzol being used as mud. And then it came time for the magnum opus of the town, the large, hefty silo. I started with the cone shape, which I then inverted to be the spouts, you know, the bottom of the silo. I'm going to put a picture on screen of what my reference image was. These are different than the other silos because the spout on the bottom will load into a truck. Which, again, there's no vehicles in the map yet. I am planning to add those. For the top part, I used just andesites in a ring formation, stack it up, and then added some tough pillars around the sides to make it look like supports. It's not exactly what a silo like this would look like, but that's just because I wanted this to have more shape. especially going in with the polish andesite for some of those finer details. Now, the roof gave me a bit of trouble. I actually went through maybe 2 or 3 designs for this. The first completed design was scrapped because it was just way too flat. I did have the right idea. I came back to it the next day and decided to completely redo it, this time making it a steeper slope, and that really made it look better. The roof was just not nearly as flat, it actually had some good shape to it, and overall I'm pretty happy with how this silo turned out. And with this, I'm proud to say that Ancon is about 90% completed. There is actually a little bit that I did off camera, including these roads here for each of the houses. Now there's actual proper driveways leading out of these garages here. Additionally, every house now has a fully finished interior. I've never actually really done interiors before, so this was kind of a first for me. And if I'm being honest, I'm actually pretty proud with how they turned out. Looking at the world map here, you can get a sense of scale for this entire town, and it's not even finished. There's still roads I need to connect to other parts of the map. One's gonna go through a tunnel here and extend out this way. Another one's gonna go here and then up. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, but at least the majority of it is completed. This map may seem really big, and well, it is. It may seem like there's a lot to do, but well, it can get so much bigger. There truly is a hell of a lot more to be done. And I am prepared to sink as many hours into this project as I need to. So I hope that each and every one of you watching will join me on this ridiculous journey. After all, you are a hero of Amadias.